We're on Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, and we're up to Tashma Ubegadol, and we're talking about whether Rabbi Yehuda agrees that an esrog has to be a priate hadar. And as you know, we've already proven in the name of Rava, to really upshlag Rava, that Rabbi Yehuda does not require priate hadar in the case of esrog because he's machshir yavish. But here we have a brisa that seems to give us the exact opposite impression. Ubegadol kidei sheyechos shnayim biyado achas divrei Rabbi Yehuda. We've discussed until now, based on the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Daled, the minimum size of an esrog. It's got to be a beitza, size of an egg. What's the maximum size? I don't know if you've ever seen a very large esrog. I've seen it. And Rabbi Yehuda says that if you can't hold two esrogim in one hand at the same time, then it's apparently too large, and it's possible. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Omer afilu bi'echad b'shtei yodayim. Even if he needs two hands to hold on to one esrog, it's still kosher. My timer, what's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Why does he pass? Lav, shouldn't we assume mishum debai hada? Rabbi Yehuda holds creates hadar literally, and he requires that it be beautiful. And if it's too large, it's unusually monstrous in its size, it's not hadar. Now, earlier we asked the question, how, according to the Gemara's Maskana, the Rabbi Yehuda does not require hadar in the case of esrog, and therefore he's machshir yavesh. How does he read the pasuk? Apparently, hadar has to do with the fact that the esrog is described as a priate hadar because of the way it grows on the tree. That's a description in agricultural terms, scientific terms, but it doesn't mean beauty. But here you see that Rabbi Yehuda disqualifies a very large esrog apparently because he requires a beautiful priate hadar. Lo, Gemara says, "Keva diyama Rabba lulav b'yamin v'esrog b'smol." Rabbah ruled that you have to hold the lulav, which is 3 minim out of the 4, in your right hand. The right hand is always more chashuv, so you have 3 out of 4 minim. And the esrog should be held in the left hand. And now we're afraid, zimni de mechalfi levi osi lafuchinu. If you have such a large esrog, then you're going to be tempted to take it in your right hand, because your right hand is a stronger hand. So he's going to reverse. He's going to take the eged of 3 minim in his left hand and the esrog in his right hand. The osi ifsalu, which literally means that the esrog might become puzzle. So it's not that taking the esrog in the right hand is itself a problem. Again, that's not the perfect way of fulfilling the mitzvah. And if he takes the lulav in the left and the esrog in the right, then he might kind of reposition it. And when he moves the lulav to the right hand and then transferring the esrog back into his left hand, then at that point, as a result of this kind of repositioning, we're afraid that the esrog might become puzzle. It might get dropped. So again, if the esrog is relatively small, so he can reposition it from one hand to the other without dropping. But if on the other hand it's very large and he tries to reposition it, then he might drop. And again, we don't know what he might drop. Rashi seems to say he might drop the 3 minim and they get invalidated, or alternatively, the Ritva learns that he might drop the esrog. He doesn't realize that the esrog became puzzle. He's going to continue to rely on this esrog. the El Rabbi Yehuda Ksiv Hadar, but our question that we asked earlier, who Hadar B'ilona Mishana Mishan. This is an agricultural description of a species that grows on the tree from year to year. It dwells on the tree for year to year. So again, the Torah doesn't tell us exactly what is pre-Eitz Hadar. We don't know that it's an esrog. That's part of the Kabbalah, the Mesores of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And the pre-Eitz Hadar is the esrog. Now, we have a Gemara later on in Daf Lamed Hey that quotes Tanoim and even Amoraim. They interpreted, they darshan the pasuk as alluding to that specific species called an esrog. One of these drashas is that the word hadar should be read as hadar. So you just change the vocals, the vowels. So the unnamed, ambiguous species is one which dwells, hadar. It dwells on the tree for several years. And that's an allusion to the esrog, because all other fruits, they fall off the tree when they ripen, but the esrog remains on the tree for several seasons if it is not cut off. And the Gemara is telling us that Rabbi Yehuda agrees with that drasha. He doesn't interpret the word hadar as beautiful, and therefore he doesn't require that the esrog be a beautiful esrog. So the maskana, the Gemara seems to conclude that Rabbi Yehuda does not require noi. That's why he was machshir yavesh, and he does not disqualify an esrog based on, physical defects. And the reason is because he reads it not as hadar, but rather as hadar. The Mishnah says, "Shal asheru shal irani dachas." If you have an esrog that comes from either an asherah, that's a tree that was worshipped by the idol worshippers, or shal irani dachas, you have a city that most of the citizens in that city worshipped avodah zarah, and a lulav that comes either from a dekel of asherah or from an irani dachas is possible. So the Gemara asks, "V'shel asherah possible? V'amar rava lulav shel avodah zarah lo yitol v'yimnot al kosher." That it's mos. We should not take a lulav from avodah zarah. And Rashi gives a number of examples of a lulav of avodah zarah. Oshesh tamshu bo litzorach avodah zarah. They use the lulav as a broom to clean the karka in front of the idol. Osha avdu bo es avodah zarah. Ayidei sheviro so lefanel. Would carry it in front of the idol, and that was part of their worship. Zarko so they threw it on top of the idol. So in all these cases, Rava says we should avoid using that lulav lechatchila because it's not really the appropriate ideal mitzvah's lulav. It's mos, but im natal b'di'eved kosher. He fulfills his mitzvah, and yet our Mishnah says it's possible, which implies that even b'di'eved it would be possible. How do we reconcile the statement of Rava with our Mishnah? So the Gemara answers, Hacha, in the case of our Mishnah, that lulav shal asher is possible, asher the Moshe Skinon, we're talking about an asherah of a Jew, like the asherahs that were at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, about which the Torah commands us to burn them. It says, Vashreim tisrfun ba'esh, and therefore we apply the principle of kitutse mechta shira. It's as if the shear was completely ground and pulverized because it's omed l'sreifa. And a lulav has to have a minimum shear of 4 tfachim, we'll learn later on. Rav, on the other hand, is talking about a lulav of avodah zarah shel goy, and that lends itself to bittul. All right, we'll talk a little about bittul. And this is based on a sugya in Masechet avodah zarah nun beis, that goy mevatel avodah zarah shelo v'shel chaver, klomar shem osa b'maisa mochiach she'eno noeg ba od elohus, kigon shekotas rosho, os rosh ozno, or rosh chotbo, v'chayotzi b'zeh rehi b'tela, midid avodas kolcha mitaris umuteres ba'no. Doesn't require sreifa. So there's no ketuse mechta shiura. In the case of avodah zarah shel goy. Umeachar shenita levatlo lahatis alula ba'no v'lo yisarev lo shayach bo lomar bo ketuse mechta shiura. And daikar nami, this is very meduyak. You can read it carefully into our Mishnah. That our Mishnah is talking about an asher shel Yisrael to katani to irani dach dumya to irani dachas. In one breath, the Mishnah disqualifies a lulav of asherah with a lulav of irani dachas. It sounds like they both have the same deficiency. And in the case of asherah shel irani dachas, if we equate the two, well, lulav shel irani dachas, the chisaron is because kituse mechta shiura, and it has to be burnt because that's halacha of irani dachas. We have to burn down the city. So too, lulav shel asherah is again similar. It's a chisaron of kituse mechta shiura because it's an asherah shel Yisrael, and it requires sreifa shma mina, and this is an excellent proof. The Mishnah says lulav sheniktam rocho pasul. What's niktam? Omar Avhuna lo shanu ela niktam. It means nechtak rosha. Roshe rov ha'olim ha'lyonim. Most of the top leaves are cut. Avol nistak. Klomar nistaku roshe ha'olim is then kosher. And the Gemara is going to question whether nistak is kosher, but Tanya, lulav kafuf, and here on the top of Lamed Beis, and lulav kavutz, and lulav saduk, and lulav akum, that's domel amagal posel. So that's where we're going to stop for today, here on the top of Daf Lamed Beis. Thank you very much.